Hello everyone and welcome to my channel Y&R Trends. I hope everyone is having a wonderful day. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up. As Genoa City continues to churn with high-stakes drama and family feuds, a new tension is rising that could forever alter the delicate dynamics between the Abbotts and the Newmans, centering squarely on the youngest members of the Abbott clan, Johnny and Katie. These two, once sheltered from the uglier machinations of corporate power plays, are gradually stepping into a world where loyalty is tested and morality is often a gray, shifting concept. Johnny Abbott, the ever-curious and precocious son of Billy, and Katie, the fiercely intelligent and determined daughter of the same, are beginning to perceive cracks in the facade of their grandfather Victor Newman, the man whose presence dominates Genoa City with an iron grip. The whispers of Victor's latest scheme, a merciless, calculated move against Billy, designed to undermine the launch of Abbott Communications, have reached the ears of the children, and with each passing day, their awareness grows sharper, their understanding deeper. The Abbott Communications launch party, meant to be a celebration of Billy and Sally Spectra's tireless efforts and a testament to the Abbott family's continued resilience in the face of corporate adversaries, looms ever closer, and the children are slated to be on hand, their presence seemingly innocuous, yet pivotal. Their growing comprehension of the stakes involved in the battle between their father and their grandfather means that they can no longer be entirely shielded from the truth. They are no longer merely passive observers. They are witnesses capable of reading the tension in the room, noticing the sly manipulations, the calculated glances, and the subtle coercions that Victor employs with such chilling precision. For Johnny and Katie, the realization that their grandfather's protective actions are often veiled assaults against their own family may strike with a force they are unprepared for, compelling them to question their loyalties and confront the moral implications of remaining silent. Victoria Newman, ever the peacemaker, is acutely aware of the danger of placing the children in the crossfire of this ongoing feud, and she worries that the innocence of Johnny and Katie may be irreversibly compromised as the conflict escalates. But the narrative of Y&R rarely allows for a shielded peace. Inevitably, the scheming, the sabotage, and the relentless drive for corporate dominance will seep into the children's world, forcing them to reckon with the realities of adulthood far sooner than any of them might have anticipated. Victor's collaboration with Adam Newman, a partnership forged in mutual ambition and cunning, further complicates matters. Together, they are crafting a scheme that, if successful, could destabilize Abbott Communications, thereby undermining Billy's professional achievements and striking at the heart of Abbott family pride. The plan, cloaked in secrecy and executed with meticulous precision, involves attempting to sway Jill Abbott to withdraw her funding for the launch event, a move designed to create chaos and doubt in the minds of the Abbotts and their allies. Even if Jill remains steadfast, Victor and Adam have contingencies, backup strategies designed to ensure that some form of disruption occurs, with Victor targeting Billy's company both as a distraction and as a demonstration of his enduring dominance. For Johnny and Katie, the revelation of such a plot, whether through overheard conversations, subtle hints from concerned adults, or the aftermath of Victor's interference, could be the catalyst that shifts their perspective, compelling them to reconsider the infallibility of the man they have long admired as a patriarchal figure. The children may come to see that loyalty to family does not necessarily mean unconditional obedience to authority, and that moral courage can manifest in standing up to even the most powerful figures in one's life. Their potential alignment against Victor's ruthless tactics could serve as a dramatic pivot in the story, offering both a fresh generational perspective and a narrative opportunity to explore the complexities of familial bonds in the shadow of corporate warfare. In such a storyline, Victor's long history of manipulation and dominance, often tolerated or even admired by those around him, would be challenged directly by the very bloodline he has sought to control, signaling a moment of reckoning. Johnny and Katie's emerging consciousness of the injustice being inflicted upon their father, and potentially Uncle Jack, could fuel a series of confrontations, emotional debates, and strategic decisions, all while the launch party itself serves as the backdrop, a symbol of triumph under threat, and a stage where allegiances are tested in the most public of ways. As they navigate the moral ambiguity of the situation, the children may also become conduits for adult characters to reassess their positions, sparking conversations between Victoria, Billy, and even Jill about the long-term implications of Victor's unrelenting pursuit of dominance. The potential for Johnny and Katie to actively intervene, whether through direct confrontation, subtle acts of sabotage, or the use of newfound knowledge to counteract Victor's schemes, adds layers of tension and intrigue to an already volatile situation. Such developments would not only deepen the viewer's engagement with the narrative, but also highlight the evolving roles of younger characters in a series traditionally dominated by seasoned players. The juxtaposition of youthful idealism against Victor's calculated cruelty could illuminate the series' ongoing exploration of ethics, family loyalty, and the consequences of unchecked ambition. As the launch party approaches, the emotional stakes are amplified. The children's perspectives, their potential choices to oppose or stand against their grandfather, and the ripple effects of their decisions may culminate in a series of shocking revelations, heated confrontations, and perhaps even moments of reconciliation or understanding, depending on how Victor responds to challenges from within his own family. The dynamics at play offer fertile ground for dramatic tension, character development, and the inevitable moral reckonings that are the lifeblood of the young and the restless. It is here, in the crucible of familial loyalty, corporate warfare, and ethical dilemmas, that Johnny and Katie may truly step out of the shadow of their elders, asserting themselves as individuals capable of shaping the future of both the Abbott and Newman legacies. In the process, the audience is invited to reconsider Victor not simply as an untouchable patriarch or an unflinching villain, but as a figure whose actions have consequences reaching into the hearts and minds of the next generation, reminding viewers that no one, no matter how powerful, is immune to the moral scrutiny of those around them, and certainly not to the eyes of those who have most to lose or gain from his decisions. And as Victor prepares for what may be his most audacious move yet against Billy, the presence of Johnny and Katie on the sidelines, or perhaps in the very center of the unfolding drama, ensures that the stakes are higher than ever, promising a storyline rich with tension, emotion, and the inescapable truth that the children of Genoa City's most storied families are no longer mere observers, but active participants in the ongoing saga of loyalty, betrayal, and the pursuit of justice. As Genoa City braced itself for another round of corporate and familial conflict, the spotlight began to shift subtly but unmistakably onto the youngest members of the Abbott family, Johnny and Katie, who in recent weeks had begun to perceive the cracks in the seemingly invincible armor of their grandfather Victor Newman. These children, once content to observe from the sidelines, had grown perceptive enough to notice that Victor's so-called protective guidance often masked a more manipulative and self-serving agenda, particularly when it came to targeting their father, Billy, or manipulating business affairs to the detriment of anyone who opposed him. Johnny, with his natural curiosity and keen instincts, often watched quietly, his young mind piecing together patterns of scheming and subtle intimidation. Katie, equally intelligent and already demonstrating a streak of moral courage, was not as easily swayed by Victor's reputation or the awe-inspiring presence he carried into every room. The upcoming Abbott Communications launch party, intended as a grand celebration of Billy and Sally Spectra's tireless work and a symbol of the Abbott family's continued innovation and resilience, was suddenly transformed in their eyes into a potential stage for confrontation and moral reckoning. They were scheduled to attend, ostensibly as part of the family's public support, but in truth, their presence could serve as a critical moral counterweight to the unfolding drama. Victoria Newman, ever the protector and mediator, found herself walking a delicate line, acutely aware that the children could not be shielded indefinitely from the harsh realities of their family's business feuds, and yet hoping desperately that they could navigate the complexities without being drawn into the storm. But in the world of Genoa City, innocence rarely survives contact with power unscathed. Victor's latest scheme, hatched with his equally ambitious son, Adam Newman, threatened to strike at the heart of Billy's latest business endeavor, a move calculated to not only humiliate Billy but also to destabilize the Abbott family's corporate standing and, by extension, its emotional equilibrium. Victor's strategy involved a multi-layered approach, beginning with an attempt to persuade Jill Abbott to pull funding for the launch event, thereby creating chaos and uncertainty before the event even began. Should Jill remain steadfast, as she often does when confronted with her own moral compass, Victor relied on Adam to implement contingency plans, employing cunning tactics designed to disrupt Billy's plans in subtle and overt ways. Johnny and Katie, increasingly aware of these undercurrents, began to understand that the world was not always fair, that power could be wielded cruelly, and that family loyalty did not always align neatly with personal ethics. The realization was daunting, yet it also ignited in them a sense of responsibility, a burgeoning recognition that silence in the face of wrongdoing might equate to complicity. As the launch party approached, both children found themselves navigating a complex moral landscape, supporting their father and the achievements of Abbott Communications while grappling with the knowledge that their grandfather's actions could undermine not just the event but the very fabric of their family's unity. This internal conflict was mirrored externally, as the Abbott family prepared to present a united front to the public, with Billy and Sally embodying the optimism and resilience that had become hallmarks of the Abbott legacy. Yet behind the smiles and champagne flutes, a silent battle was unfolding, one that Johnny and Katie could perceive in subtle glances, whispered conversations, and the palpable tension that seemed to precede every interaction with Victor. The children's growing awareness set the stage for a potential generational confrontation, a moment in which the younger Abbotts might assert moral authority in ways that challenged Victor's long-standing dominance. For Johnny, the thought of seeing his father undermined, humiliated, or distracted from his professional achievements was intolerable, stirring a mix of anger, frustration, and protective instinct. Katie, similarly, wrestled with the notion of familial loyalty versus ethical action, recognizing that standing up to a grandfather she had once revered required courage that belied her years. Together they represented a new force within the family, one that could potentially influence the outcomes of Victor's plans, either by overtly confronting him, by acting as moral conscience for the adults around them, or by finding subtle ways to thwart his machinations without drawing the ire of other family members prematurely. Victor, for his part, remained blissfully unaware, or perhaps arrogantly dismissive, of the children's growing awareness, focusing instead on the immediate goal, disrupting Billy's launch and using the resulting distraction to further his own agendas, including undermining Jack Abbott and consolidating control over Jabot and the Newman Empire. The layers of scheming were intricate, involving financial leverage, personal persuasion, and psychological manipulation, all of which required the careful calibration of timing and influence. Adam, ever the strategist, played a critical supporting role, scouting vulnerabilities in Abbott Communications plans, identifying potential allies and weak links, and ensuring that Victor's schemes were executed with precision. The launch party itself, envisioned as a celebration, was thus fraught with the potential for disaster, a ticking time bomb that could either expose the depths of Victor's ruthlessness or catalyze a moment of collective resistance from those unwilling to be pawns in his game. Amid this turbulence, Johnny and Katie's involvement, though seemingly peripheral, could prove decisive. Their actions, whether through questioning adults, voicing objections, or even subtly influencing conversations, could destabilize Victor's assumptions about control, forcing him to confront consequences in ways he rarely faced in his years of corporate dominance. Moreover, the children's moral clarity, unclouded by years of business pragmatism or personal vendettas, positioned them uniquely as agents of conscience within the family, capable of prompting adults to reflect on their own complicity or passivity in the face of unethical behavior. For Victoria, observing her children navigate this terrain was both heartening and terrifying. She recognized the value of fostering moral courage, yet feared the emotional toll that confronting a figure like Victor could exact on their still developing sense of self and familial identity. The unfolding drama offered the audience a rare glimpse into the intersection of innocence, awareness, and moral responsibility, as Johnny and Katie's potential decisions could shape not just the trajectory of the Abbott Communications launch, but also the broader moral landscape of Genoa City itself. As the launch day arrived, tensions ran high. Johnny and Katie positioned themselves strategically within the social landscape of the event, their presence a quiet but potent statement of support for their father and the ideals of fairness and integrity he represented. Meanwhile, Victor and Adam moved with precision behind the scenes, coordinating efforts to create disruption, employing financial maneuvers, persuasive arguments, and subtle intimidations to sway key players, and preparing for contingencies in case their initial plans faltered. The contrast between Victor's calculated cruelty and the children's emergent moral reasoning could not have been starker, one driven by a desire for dominance and control, the other by a burgeoning sense of justice and empathy, which, though less seasoned, possessed a clarity and purity that made it difficult to ignore. Throughout the day, small yet significant interactions underscored this tension. Johnny questioning the fairness of certain business decisions in private conversations with Sally, Katie observing the unease on Jill's face and subtly signaling support for her cautious stance, and both children exchanging knowing glances that conveyed unspoken solidarity in the face of a morally compromised patriarch. The party, designed as a moment of celebration, thus became a crucible of ethical challenge, forcing adults and children alike to confront the boundaries of loyalty, ambition, and personal responsibility. Even as Victor executed his planned disruptions, the watchful eyes of Johnny and Katie ensured that no action went unnoticed, no manipulative tactic left unexamined. In doing so, the children assumed a role that transcended mere observation. They became witnesses, potential interveners, and silent arbiters of morality within the complex web of familial and corporate intrigue. The implications of their involvement extended beyond the immediate drama of the launch. They hinted at a generational shift in the Abbott-Newman dynamic, one in which the younger generation might no longer be content to accept the unethical actions of their elders without question. The narrative tension, built upon the interplay of power, loyalty, and moral awareness, provided a rich canvas for exploring themes central to the young and the restless. The costs of ambition, the challenges of familial loyalty, and the capacity of individuals, regardless of age, to assert ethical agency in the face of entrenched power. As Victor's plans threatened to reach fruition, the children's growing assertiveness and perceptiveness suggested that the outcomes would not be entirely dictated by his schemes, leaving open the tantalizing possibility of intervention, confrontation, or even unexpected alliance. Ultimately, the story arc underscored the complexity of family dynamics in Genoa City. The entanglement of love, loyalty, ambition, and ethics created a landscape in which every action carried weight, every decision had consequences, and even the youngest members of the Abbott family could play a transformative role in shaping the destiny of both their immediate family and the broader corporate world around them. Johnny and Katie's journey from passive observers to morally aware participants reflected a larger narrative theme within the young and the restless, wherein the next generation is compelled to confront the legacies of their elders, question authority, and assert their own values amidst the swirling currents of power, manipulation, and emotional loyalty. As the launch concluded and the ramifications of Victor's attempted disruption became clearer, the children's actions or inactions would set the stage for ongoing confrontations, potential reconciliations, and the evolving moral landscape of Genoa City, reaffirming that in a world dominated by ruthless ambition and complex family allegiances, courage, integrity, and insight could come from the most unexpected quarters, sometimes in the form of the youngest voices in the room, whose clarity of conscience and willingness to stand against wrongdoing could shift the balance of power in ways no adult might anticipate. And so, as the curtain fell on the Abbott Communications launch, the stage was set not merely for corporate rivalry but for an intergenerational reckoning, one in which Johnny and Katie Abbott, once on the periphery of family drama, were now central to the unfolding saga, their emerging moral agency poised to challenge Victor Newman's long-standing dominion and to remind the world, and their family, that even the most entrenched power structures are vulnerable to the insight, courage, and determination of those willing to act when justice and loyalty are on the line. In the days following the Abbott Communications launch, the emotional and psychological ripples of Victor's attempted interference continued to spread, touching each member of the family in ways both overt and subtle, and deepening the internal dilemmas that Johnny and Katie found themselves confronting. At school, the normally light-hearted conversations they shared with classmates seemed distant and trivial, overshadowed by the heavy realities of adult conflicts that now rested uncomfortably on their young shoulders. Johnny replayed everything he had witnessed at the launch over and over again in his mind, the tense glances exchanged among the adults, the hushed tones, the palpable anxiety that filled the air long before the champagne corks were popped. Katie, equally introspective, found herself scrutinizing interactions with Victor in a new light, searching for sincerity but often discovering manipulation or strategic positioning masquerading as loving concern. Even in moments where Victor spoke kindly to them, encouraging their studies or praising their poise, the children could not shake the awareness that beneath his polished composure lay a relentless need for power and control that could not, and should not be excused merely because he was family. Victoria, sensing the shift in her children's emotional states, attempted to reassure them gently, explaining that families sometimes disagreed, and that adults sometimes made decisions that children did not fully understand. Yet Victoria herself was torn, because she knew that Johnny and Katie understood all too well, and she feared that by diminishing the significance of what they had seen, she might be teaching them the wrong lesson about accountability. Billy, in contrast, chose to be more candid with his children, not in a way that burdened them with details but rather in a sincere acknowledgement that what Victor had done was neither fair nor honorable, and that standing up for what was right, no matter who stood on the other side, was a value worth defending. These conversations planted seeds in the children that continued to grow, shaping their evolving sense of personal ethics and preparing them for the next confrontation, which came sooner than anyone expected. Victor, confident that his actions had stirred uncertainty despite the launch's mixed but ultimately successful outcome, prepared to push his offensive even further, ordering Adam to begin executing secondary tactics designed to destabilize Abbott communications from within. Adam, though dedicated, could not entirely suppress his unease. He recognized that involving the children in the fallout, indirectly or otherwise, could ultimately damage the Newman brand more than any successful corporate takedown could heal. Yet Adam proceeded, if only because he believed that Victor's approval and strategic genius were necessary for his own long-term standing in the family. Meanwhile, at the Abbott mansion, Johnny and Katie's growing discomfort became the subject of whispered conversations between Billy and Jack, who both noticed the way the children avoided direct discussions about Victor, and how their eyes sharpened with unspoken questions when corporate matters were mentioned. Jack, ever the family protector, saw in the children's struggle a reflection of his own lifelong war with Victor, a dynamic not of professional rivalry but of moral opposition. He urged Billy to support the children's developing philosophies, even if it meant allowing them to draw lines of personal allegiance that could create painful fractures later on. Billy agreed, but he also harbored a deep paternal instinct to protect them from the emotional weight that came with opposing someone as powerful and influential as Victor Newman. Sally, caught in the middle, offered quiet support and listened when the children needed to talk, recognizing that their perspectives, fresh, honest and unfiltered, offered a form of wisdom that many adults had long since compromised in pursuit of self-preservation. Jill, for her part, found herself unexpectedly moved by the children's subtle reactions. Though she did not directly address the subject with them, she confided privately in Esther that seeing the children wrestle with moral dilemmas reminded her that corporate warfare was never truly contained to boardrooms. It bled into living rooms, classrooms, family dinners, and the inner worlds of those too young to defend themselves from its emotional fallout. Against this backdrop, Victor continued to strategize, attending meetings, issuing directives, and making calculated calls designed to undermine Billy's foothold in the media arena. Yet something unexpected began to happen. Small disruptions in his plans, minor but irritating flaws in execution, subtle delays that could not be easily explained. Victor initially suspected incompetence or betrayal, but deeper investigation revealed a surprising truth. The disruptions were the result of subtle, intuitive redirections and timely communications initiated by none other than Johnny and Katie. They had not directly sabotaged Victor's operations, but their newfound vigilance meant that they were often present during conversations, able to pick up on hints and implications, and they would pass their concerns along to Billy, Sally, and Jack with a calm resolve that belied their age. They alerted adults to questionable emails, closed-door meetings, and sudden vendor changes that didn't make sense, prompting the Abbotts to adjust plans before Victor could strike.